everybody, and welcome to another episode of Painful Friday. Instead of a usual Painful Friday blog, I decided to do something different. Most of you know Mark Presak from his network, Jesus Network TV. But today I would like to dive a little deeper and learn more about Mark Presak himself. Hello, Mark.
Well, hey, Debbie, thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here.
Hey, how are you? My first question is, how was your relationship with Jesus growing up?
Well, Debbie, I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up in church, and I accepted Christ as my Lord and Savior in the third grade. And I was nurtured in that and by several loving church members, and it's been a great experience. But when I went off to college, I went off the rails, and it was probably between when I was 20 and when I was 40. I was really living for the world. But God got my attention about that time, and a lot has changed. But He's taken my life and my journey with Christ in a whole new direction. I'm no longer a businessman. I am a missionary, self-appointed. Well, no, God-appointed, and He's just shown me a whole new community of people like yourself, Debbie, of people that are using various platforms to proclaim and exalt the Lord Jesus Christ. And the Lord has allowed me to come alongside them and help them in their journey. So my ministry is to help yours, and I could not be happier.
Well, would you mind telling me a little bit more about your college experience and how you first developed, like you said you went off the rails and then you like to know Jesus. Can you tell me a little more about that?
Well, Debbie, when you get away from the influences that have been a part of your life, you're off in college. And I went to the People's Republic of Florida State University. That is one of the most liberal institutions. It's right behind Berkeley. It's kind of the Berkeley of the South. To make matters worse, I majored in, get this, sociology and psychology, double major. And those are the two most liberal disciplines in academia. And you begin to study things like Marxism and stratification and race relations and all the things that the world is the strife in the world, as if this education could do something about it. So I was indoctrinated very, very liberally. And then as becoming a businessman, I had engaged myself in a lot of self-help books. I was reading them voraciously. And I began pursuing a business career that God just wasn't a part of. I thought I was the one doing all these great things. I thought it was my cunning and skill and charisma and those things that were leading to the success that I had. But finally, it all came crashing down. So I didn't want to take responsibility for it. So I turned to God and said, God, whatever I am is yours. And I have failed miserably. And if you see fit, if you can use me in some way, I've tried it my way. I'm going to try it your way now. And that's been how it is since I was about 40.
Can you tell me what you told me that you majored in sociology and psychology. What was your original purpose in doing that?
I just wanted to go to college, drink beer, chase women, and party. And those are some of the easiest disciplines to excel at. If you show up for class, you'll get a C. Yeah, there's only one course that's hard in that whole discipline, statistics.
So after you went to college, what was your original plan?
My original
plan. What did you do next?
I didn't really have one. I just wanted to say I was going to college, and I enjoyed the college culture. There was a lot of drinking, a lot of parties, a lot of, sex. I mean, everything the world has to offer. And I was just indulging in that college lifestyle. So I just had, and by the way, academically, I did very good. I made the dean's list every semester except one. That was that semester I had statistics class. I was glad to get a C.
When did God start changing your mind? Like you said at 40, how did that happen?
Well, there were two events, I think, that woke me up, and some of it's a little bit too personal to go into a lot of detail, but my business career was very successful. I found myself on the road. I was working 80-hour weeks. I was on the road most of the time. I was gone most of the time. But of course, the fruit of that business was buying things like a new Corvette, a new camper, a new truck, a bass boat, all the things the world has to offer. And I was I was really caught up in consumerism. And I thought that's what I had to do as a husband to make my wife happy. Well, I was gone a lot. And that left me unaccountable. So my conduct was not glorified. It was shameful, to be honest. But then also we adopted our daughter about that time. And I began to realize that the path I was on was, well, if the world would have delivered on its promises of happiness and joy, I might still be living that way. But the fact is, the world doesn't. When you get that bass boat, that's great for a while. In fact, behind me is a lake I grew up on, Lake Miccosukee. But after a while, it kind of gets old. So then you need a Corvette, So I bought a brand new Corvette. Every boy's dream. Boy, was that great, for a while. But these things that the world offers, although they do bring some temporary joy, they don't bring lasting contentment. So I felt an emptiness, even though there was an abundance all around me. I felt very empty. And when we adopted, I realized I cannot be on the road 4 and 5 nights a week and be a part-time husband. So I committed myself to be a full-time dad and a full-time husband.
When did you first come up with the idea for PJNet TV? Originally named Patriotic Journalist TV.
Well, it went through several mutations, going way back in the days of dial-up internet, and Facebook was just getting started. I am a computer programmer, and I wrote this application that is essentially what we're doing right now, video chat. Well, this was in a day of dial-up internet, and most people didn't even have a camera, a webcam. But I came up with this idea, thought we'll set up a Christian video chat room where people can drop in and offer testimony, do prayer requests. We can pray. We can do Bible study. And I launched it, Debbie. Excuse me. And nobody showed up. I thought, well, it's first night. Let's do it again tomorrow night. Well, after several nights of nobody showing up, I was really depressed. I mean, I thought, this is awful. It might have been that I don't think it was a bad idea. I think it was ahead of its time. People weren't used to doing what we're doing right now, video conferencing. But in any event, I remember Newt Gingrich was running for president. I went to his website, and part of the gimmick was you could buy a gallon of Newt gas. Well, Newt was promising gas to be $2.50 a gallon. That's back when it was $4 and $5 a gallon. And you could, quote, buy a gallon of Newt gas, which meant make a $2.50 donation to Newt's campaign. Well, Debbie, there was a problem. I literally didn't have $2.50. And that was gut wrenching. When you can't even scrape together $2.50. So I thought, well, I've got this video conference room that's basically going thud, and maybe I can offer that. So I rebranded it as Newt Now, and I announced it. Debbie, the first night, 38 people showed up. Man, it was, and the momentum, the excitement, and almost every one of them were Christian. So I didn't really feel like I had gotten off the path. I just thought there was a fork in the road. If Christians are involved in politics, so be it. Let's go with the flow. And it was really, really gaining momentum. And then Newt suspended his campaign. So we took a deep breath and we branded it Patriot Journalist Network. The idea, I don't think it was a very good one, but it seemed pretty good at the time, is that the news media is not doing a good job of covering the topics that are of interest to conservative Christians and patriotic Christians. So I kind of thought, well, each of us, now that we have this technology where each of us can do what you're doing, Debbie, we can have our own platform and exalt the kingdom. Well, I thought, well, we can network together and each person can find articles of news that are of interest that the mainstream media doesn't get. That went on for years and had some moments of outstanding success. I developed a Twitter application that allowed people to, where the app could tweet on their behalf. I won't go into all the details, but there was a point that we had north of 4,000 people involved that had opted in, and we were retweeting tweets that were favorable to whatever cause we were, whatever hashtag we were trying to promote that week. And it was quite successful until Twitter pulled the plug and canceled us. Well, that was a real kick in the stomach. And so I rebranded it to what it is today, the Praise Jesus Network, PJNet.tv, with our mission being to provide a platform for everyday Christians to share their walk with Christ. So that's, believe it or not, that's the short version.
How do you get your guests?
Well, it hasn't always been easy, but we reached out to some people, and at first nobody had heard of us. And I would say for every 10 that we would reach out to, we might get one guest. But we eventually harvested a few, and after a while, people became more familiar with the brand. But most importantly, I think what happened is I was hired to do a video for a keynote speaker at a Christian writers conference. And literally on the way there, I decided that the speaker that I was working for, that was paying me, was going to be on stage a total of maybe an hour over a 3-day period. And the conference lasted 3 days. And I thought, well, there'll be all these Christian authors there. And my mind went back decades before that, when the days of VCR recorders, the kind you had to hold on your shoulder, you know. But my wife and I had attended a wedding, and at the reception, they had this camera mounted up there, and my wife and I and other couples would stand in front of the camera and say, "Congratulations, Edward and Jeannie. We wish you very well." And of course, that was later made into a video that was kept as a memento of that celebration. And I thought, well, there'll be all these writers there. Maybe I could do something like that. So I set up another camera in a separate room. And while during lunch breaks, I would go around to the tables and say, if you'd like to do a little introductory video, no charge, I'll just do it. Well, I started posting these after the conference. There were like 30 people that did it. And they were effusive commercials for the conference. And then the conference people started getting excited about it. And all these people I had met, now these became guests on our program. So that's, believe it or not, the short version.
Why do people usually always call you coach? I noticed that on your show.
Well, it's an honor to be called coach. I can't think of any more respectful and fitting title for me, because my coach has been such a powerful influence in my own life, my high school football coach. And not that I didn't have good parents. I did. I had great parents. But my father was not a killer instinct, competitive, alpha male type A personality, but my coach certainly was. And he brought out something in me that I didn't know I had. And he gave me confidence, and he gave me discipline more than anything else. And the principles that I rely on when life throws you a curve, By the way, I had a great education. I went to a private school in high school. But when life gets hard, folks, it's not my deep understanding of the Pythagorean theorem that gets me through it. It's the discipline and rigor and go at it and keep going no matter what my coach gave me. And so it's part of my persona, and it just kind of stuck. In fact, one of our guests gave me this. I use it every day. It's a coffee mug, and I can't be more honored. I can't, if I can just be a coach. When you think about it, that means disciple. If you're discipling somebody, aren't you coaching them? So it's quite an honor, and I just I can't think of a higher calling in my life.
I noticed usually at the end of your show you end up with a question. Why do you always do that? And like, what is that question, and what does it mean for you, and what do you hope it means for your audience?
Debbie, I'm so glad you asked that question. It's actually two questions. Here's the story. Well, back when Princess Diana died, my wife and I had booked a 3-week bus tour of Europe. You've seen those big double-decker buses, haven't you?
Yeah.
And so we're on this bus tour with there's 44 people on the bus. So we're driving through Europe, and it's Sunday. Now here I am with 42 people that I don't know, and we're all stuck together for the next 3 weeks. And it occurred to me that there would be no opportunity to participate in a worship service that day. And the Lord just put it on my heart to do something that I was scared to death. Debbie, I got up at the front of that bus and began walking that aisle down to the back of the bus. And at every seat along the way, excuse me, folks, I just ran 1.4 miles. And yeah, it's kind of cold outside. So you get this. Yeah. At every seat along the way, I said, I don't know where this bus is stopping next, but when you step off this bus, I'll be over to the left. And we'll just have a very short service. I'll just share a story. We'll have a word of prayer, and it'll just be our chance to worship today. Well, Debbie, I was scared to death. Well, the bus stopped, and they were used to me being up at the front. I was actually one of the youngest people on there, so I would help the elderly get down those almost vertical steps of the bus. So to my surprise, Debbie, almost everyone circled up, and I just gave a brief sermon of sorts, and we ended in prayer. And a strange thing happened. Two strange things happened. When the prayer was over, hundreds of cuckoo clocks erupted. Well, we were at the largest cuckoo clock factory in the world. The other strange thing that happened was from that point, Christians were everywhere. We were riding in that bus and people would have their Bibles out. People would have their devotional books out. From that point forward, every time we had a meal, they would call on me to say a blessing. See, that had not happened. Because the fact is, Christians are everywhere, but most of us are, well, scared, just like I was. And I was recounting this at one point in my life years later. And the question that I posed myself, that God kind of gave me, was, what's the boldest thing you've ever done for Christ? And I got reflecting on that, and that was it. And I was pretty satisfied with that answer. I really was. But then the second question, God kind of spoke to me and said, how long ago was that? And I realized it had been years and years and years. And that's where I got the challenge. I've never read it. I've never heard it. This is really a word that I feel that God gave me. And I challenge myself, the two questions. What is the boldest thing you've ever done for Christ? And how long ago was that? That's a challenge to me. And whenever I get the chance to speak publicly, regardless of if it's 6 people or 600 or what, it doesn't matter. And whatever the content of the message is that I deliver, It's going to end the same way. I would like to be remembered as Coach Presak, the guy that posed two questions. What's the boldest thing you've ever done for Christ? And how long ago was that? The challenge is to never be satisfied with either answer.
Wow, that's amazing. I am just inspired every time you end your program with that question. I'm sure it impacts other people too. How has PJNet affected your faith?
Well, wonderfully. And there's something I want to share because, and I think you can relate to this because you're a testimony to what I'm about to say. Most Christians, in my opinion, if you really get honest with yourself and start asking and challenging yourself with those two questions, I think most Christians would come up with either no answer or a vague and anemic answer. The purpose of those two questions is to challenge myself and challenge each of us to have a personal ministry. Now, you can't call going to Chick-fil-A a personal ministry. I'm sorry. Even if it's for a Bible study. You can't, let me just disqualify, attending church is not a personal ministry. That's to equip you for your personal ministry. And I believe my role, what God has called me to do, is to coach, come alongside, encourage, and inspire others to engage in a disciplined and intentional act of personal ministry. And if I can use PJNet as a platform to project that outward, so that is my goal. That is very fulfilling. I don't know if that answered your question, but that's my answer.
What is your favorite Bible verse and why?
Let me go back to your question. How has it affected my life? I'll answer your second question in a moment. When you have a personal ministry and you have committed yourself to it on a disciplined and regular schedule, let's just say once a month, even if it could be once a week, or like you, 3 times a week. Either way, the more frequent, the better. I think a lot of people don't, because they don't see, where am I going to get content week after week after week? Mm-hmm. Well, when you commit yourself to a personal ministry, that could be in the form of a blog, that could be in the form of a podcast, that could be in the form of what you're doing right now, a video program. Something happens to you spiritually. Your radar goes up. Your radar goes up. And I can honestly testify that even if nobody viewed or listened or posted anything about my, quote, personal ministry, I have spiritually grown because now my radar is up for inspiration. Yes. And you see the world through a whole different lens.
Or you notice things a lot better than you would have before.
Yeah, when you know you have something coming up, you have a broadcast or a blog, you're looking around for inspiration, and you become more aware of the presence of God in your life and in the world around you. Favorite verse, no question about it. If there were only one verse that I could keep in the Bible, I would hang on to this verse with bloody fingers and white knuckles. Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. A plan to give you hope and a future. Folks, that was recorded thousands of years ago. It's true today. It's either true or it's not. God has not called us to a life of serial defeat. He has called us to a life of abundance. And when life gets hard, that, I don't care how hard it is, that does not negate the truth that God has a plan for you. And sometimes it's during those hard times that we grow the most. I hate to say it, but it is true. So no doubt, hands down, my favorite.
What is your hope for the show? I know you said it before, but if people got only one thing from this program, what is your hope for your ministry, or what do you teach other people with your ministry?
I don't know that I'm a teacher. I have certainly served in that capacity, but that's not really why I do it. What I hope to accomplish is to motivate, inspire others to do what you're doing, Debbie. Develop a personal ministry that's projected outward and come alongside. And what it gets down to, that's making disciples. Debbie, you're making disciples. And that's what we're called to do. And I just applaud you for what you're doing, because not only are you doing it, you're doing it in a cadence and a frequency that is unheard of, 3 times a week. That's a lot. That's a commitment. And I just encourage you to keep doing it. But my hope is to develop others to have their own personal ministry, projecting outward that which we have been given.
Well, it's certainly been amazing getting to know you a lot more through this interview. I know with everything you've got going on, you're busy with PJNet. But what is your day job?
Well, I don't have one anymore. I was basically unemployed for a number of years after my business collapsed. And all the money I had made is exhausted and gone. All the Corvette's gone. Everything's gone. But I, for a while, worked part-time for a national automotive parts retailer, delivering parts to commercial accounts. And I'm grateful for that opportunity, because although you can't see the studio, there's a lot of equipment, a lot of cost, and that money that I made funded getting this thing started. But after a while, it became it was siphoning off my time and my energy, and so I just retired, so to speak. And now this is what I do, and I've been happier, but I've never been this content. I've never been this much at peace. I've never felt fulfilled. I've never felt so centered in God's will. And if I had the choice of going back to all that success and all that money, I'd turn it down. I would prefer to be content and centered in God's will.
I appreciate you sitting down and being willing to spend time with me answering these questions. It's really been an honor, like, seeing how faithful you've been with your ministry. I can only hope to be that faithful with mine, or continue to be that faithful with mine. Is there any final words you would like to leave my audience with today?
Yes, there is. You know, Debbie, at this point, as of today, we have had 348 different guests on our program. I've invited, now we've had more programs than that. Some have been here more than once. But you are only the second person that has ever invited me to share my testimony on someone else's program. You know, that makes you a really special person, Debbie. You know, everybody comes to these things wanting to know what they can get, how much audience, you know, but you're not, you instead offered to give. And, you know, it wouldn't matter. The 2 fishes and the 5 loaves, you know, Debbie, I think you exemplify. You are an example of that humble servant offering their 2 fishes and 5 loaves. And oh, how the Lord blesses that here on this earth and in eternity. And I am certain, Debbie, that he is going to say to you personally on that day, well done, my good and faithful servant. That's going to be great.
Yes, it will be great. And there'll be no more pain, no more, no more disability, no more. It'll only be peace. Again, thank you for joining us. And I always like to say to my audience, I love them, but God loves them more. Thank you for joining us today on a beautiful Friday. I hope you enjoyed listening to you with Mark Presak, and you can learn more about Mark at Mark at PJNet.tv. He's on every Monday through Friday, I think, at 9:30 and 9 p.m. So you'll be encouraged by the stories that he offers. For now, I'll see you guys Monday. Thanks again for watching. Bye-bye.
Amen.
And I think in about 2 minutes,